This is a piece of racing history here in Daytona Beach. The last part of famed NASCAR mechanic Smokey Yunick's garage was gutted by fire tonight and is being called suspicious.
For decades, NASCAR fans were told that Smokey Yunick was nothing more than a clever cheater who bent the rules until officials had no choice but to chase him out of the garage. But what if the real scandal is that the sport spent years mocking a man who was actually decades ahead of Detroit, NASCAR, and the entire American auto industry? When the doors of his legendary Daytona Beach workshop finally opened after his death, investigators did not find cartoonish outlaw machines hidden in secret vaults. They found something far more explosive: working engines, verified patents, and engineering ideas that suggested Smokey Yunick may have been right all along. The garage burned, but the evidence escaped. The final chapter of Smokey Yunick's story is both heartbreaking and strangely fitting for a man whose life was defined by constant change and experimentation. After the famous public sale of his garage contents, the Daytona Beach property was sold in 2003, and most of the original buildings were eventually demolished. Then, on April 25, 2011, the last remaining structure was destroyed by fire. The legendary best damn garage in town was physically gone, ending the existence of one of the most famous workshops in American racing history. Yet by the time the flames consumed the building, the most important parts of Smokey's legacy had already escaped into the world. The proceeds from the sale were used to support a foundation dedicated to promoting innovation in motorsports, reflecting Smokey's belief that his life's work should continue encouraging experimentation rather than becoming a frozen memorial to the past. Several of his most significant creations survived. The famous hot vapor Pontiac Fiero remains preserved at the Don Garlits Museum of Drag Racing, where it stands as tangible evidence of Smokey's unconventional engineering ideas. His family still retains prototype engines, while collectors own other experimental vehicles, accompanied by signed documentation connecting them directly to the original garage. Additional components are reportedly housed in major museum collections, ensuring that his work remains available for future generations to study. More importantly, Smokey's influence lives on in modern racing technology and regulations. Standardized NASCAR body templates can be traced back to the inspection controversies surrounding his modified Chevelles. Aerodynamic wings, once considered too radical when Smokey experimented with them, are now universal in top-level open-wheel racing. Pneumatic air jack systems eventually became common equipment throughout professional motorsports. Even his early tire wall safety concept anticipated the energy-absorbing philosophy behind today's safer barriers. The garage may have burned, but Smokey Yunick's real legacy survived in the machines, patents, safety concepts, and racing rules that continue shaping motorsports long after the building itself disappeared. The patents have entered the public domain, allowing engineers and enthusiasts to continue studying his combustion and fuel conditioning ideas. Decades after Detroit abandoned the hot vapor concept, researchers interested in thermal efficiency still examine the principles behind those experiments. When people ask what was found in Smokey Yunick's garage after his death, the most accurate answer is surprisingly simple. They found a working mechanic's shop filled with ordinary tools, extraordinary prototypes, documented patents, and a mountain of written evidence showing that one of NASCAR's most controversial figures had spent his life pushing technology further than the sport was comfortable accepting. The real shock was not the presence of secret machines. The real shock was the realization that so many of Smokey's supposedly impossible ideas turned out to be technically real, partially verified, and in some cases years ahead of the industry that rejected them. The day the myth finally collapsed. Everyone imagined Smokey Yunick's garage as a sealed fortress filled with forbidden blueprints and outlaw engines so advanced that NASCAR wanted them buried forever. The reality that emerged after his death in May 2001 was far more shocking because it was completely real. Instead of secret government seizures or midnight raids by racing officials, the famous building at 957 North Beach Street in Daytona Beach became the site of a public garage sale. Hundreds of fans traveled from across the country, hoping to carry home a piece of racing history from the place Smokey had proudly called the best damn garage in town. What they discovered was not a hidden laboratory. The building looked like a working craftsman's shop that had simply been frozen in time. $5 hammers sat beside boxes of race car parts. Hubcaps and exhaust pipes were stacked next to a working 1950s GMC dealership sign. Smokey's manual typewriter was still there, along with hand-built engines that carried extraordinary claims, including one that was advertised as capable of delivering 80 miles per gallon. His widow, Marge Yunick, captured the spirit of the sale perfectly when she joked that they were like a junkyard, but a first-class junkyard. She explained that Smokey would have hated seeing his tools locked away behind museum glass. He wanted them back in the hands of mechanics, racers, and fans who would appreciate them as living pieces of engineering history rather than untouchable artifacts. That detail changed everything. The public had expected to find evidence of cheating. Instead, they found evidence of relentless experimentation. The contrast between the legend and the reality could not have been sharper. The so-called outlaw mechanic had left behind ordinary tools mixed with extraordinary ideas, and that mixture made the discoveries far more believable than any conspiracy theory ever could. As fans carried away hammers, signs, and engine parts, a larger realization began to emerge. The real treasure hidden inside Smokey's garage was not a single secret machine. It was the proof that one stubborn mechanic had spent his life challenging assumptions that the racing establishment had accepted without question. The engines Detroit couldn't explain. Among the clutter sat the machines that truly changed Smokey Yunick's legend forever. These were not rumors passed between racers at Daytona bars. They were surviving hot vapor engines that demonstrated performance figures decades ahead of their time. Smokey took a humble 2.5-liter Pontiac Fiero Iron Duke 4-cylinder and transformed it into something almost impossible. The stock version produced roughly 90 horsepower and achieved about 35 miles per gallon on the highway. Smokey's carbureted version reportedly produced around 250 horsepower, 250 pound-feet of torque, accelerated from 0 to 60 in roughly 6.5 seconds, and still returned approximately 51 miles per gallon on premium gasoline. The secret was a process called adiabatic combustion. Instead of cooling the air-fuel mixture like conventional engines, Smokey used waste heat from the exhaust and coolant system to vaporize the fuel completely. The mixture passed through an exhaust-driven turbine called a homogenizer, and then through a heavily insulated manifold where temperatures exceeded 450 degrees Fahrenheit. By turning the fuel into a complete vapor before combustion, the engine could operate at an extremely lean air-to-fuel ratio of more than 20-1. The most controversial part of the story is that Detroit engineers reportedly tested the engine and verified its performance and emissions results. According to accounts from those involved, the engine met strict 1980s emissions standards without using a computer-controlled fuel injection system. The idea had originated years earlier through Smokey's collaboration with Ralph Johnson, a Holley carburetor expert and General Motors dyno technician. Together, they experimented with lean burn combustion and extraordinarily high exhaust temperatures, pushing the engine to the edge of detonation in search of maximum thermal efficiency. They built multiple prototypes, including Buick, Ford, and Dodge test vehicles. Each reportedly exceeded 45 miles per gallon while producing unusually high power for its displacement. Production opportunities nearly materialized through projects involving an S10 truck and a licensing agreement with Crane Cams, but the technology ultimately collapsed under concerns about durability, manufacturing cost, legal liability, and the industry's resistance to ideas that had not originated within its own engineering departments. What made the garage discoveries so important was that these engines physically survived. Smokey's daughter retained several prototypes, and enthusiast Tony Allers eventually acquired running examples and restored a daily driven Fiero replica using salvaged original components. One of those vehicles was later donated to the Don Garlitz Museum of Drag Racing, where it remains on display. A carbureted 4-cylinder producing sports car power while delivering hybrid-like fuel economy should have become one of the most important automotive breakthroughs of the 20th century. Instead, it became a forgotten experiment stored in a Daytona Beach garage, the paper trail they couldn't erase. The surviving engines were impressive, but the patent records were even more powerful evidence against the idea that Smokey Yunick was simply a talented rule breaker. Patents create an official legal timeline, and records from the United States Patent and Trademark Office show that Smokey secured at least 9 patents between 1978 and 1996. That documentation revealed a serious engineer who spent years developing, refining, and protecting original mechanical ideas. Much of his hot vapor research was backed by multiple patents that covered the exact apparatus, operating methods, and fuel conditioning systems used in his experimental Fiero project. These were not vague sketches or garage rumors. The filings included detailed engineering schematics, operational descriptions, and combustion management concepts that demonstrated extensive technical development and careful testing. They showed that Smokey approached engine efficiency with the discipline of an inventor, not merely the instincts of a racer looking for an advantage. His creativity extended far beyond fuel systems. Smokey patented a pressure vent system, an improved oil change system, and advanced engine testing methods designed to solve practical mechanical problems. The variety of subjects revealed a restless mind that constantly searched for better, faster, and more efficient ways to make machines work. His clashes with racing organizations also involved innovations that later became standard throughout motorsports. In 1961, he developed pneumatic air jacks, capable of instantly lifting a stock car during pit stops, but NASCAR rejected them as inappropriate for the series. The following year, he experimented with a large aerodynamic wing mounted above the engine of an Indianapolis Roadster. The wing dramatically improved cornering performance, yet officials quickly banned it because it was considered too radical. Ironically, the same concept later became a cornerstone of modern racing. Today, aerodynamic wings are standard equipment in Formula One, IndyCar, sports cars, and many other professional racing series. Looking back, Smokey's patent record suggests that he was often less a rule breaker than an inventor whose ideas arrived years before the racing establishment was ready to accept them. Perhaps the most haunting example involved safety. Long before the modern safer barrier existed, Smokey proposed a soft wall concept using tires sandwiched between heavy plywood sheets to absorb impacts. NASCAR did not adopt the idea. Years later, he formalized the concept in a patent describing a racetrack equipped with a novel crash barrier. This pattern appeared repeatedly throughout his career. Smokey introduced ideas that seemed unconventional. Racing officials rejected them, and the broader motorsports world eventually adopted similar concepts years or even decades later. The garage sale did not reveal hidden criminal schemes. It revealed documented evidence that many of his supposedly outrageous ideas had been supported by formal engineering work all along. The patents also destroyed another myth, that Smokey operated entirely in secret. He had spent years trying to protect and publish his ideas through official channels. The tragedy was not that his innovations were hidden. The tragedy was that so many of them were ignored. The Chevelle that rewrote NASCAR's rulebook. No story captures Smokey Yunick's engineering genius better than the legendary Chevelle that supposedly became NASCAR's infamous 7/8 scale car. For decades, racing fans have repeated the claim that Smokey built a dramatically smaller Chevelle to gain a huge aerodynamic advantage over the competition. The real story, however, is far more impressive because it relied on precision engineering rather than an obvious size reduction. If the car had truly been built at 7/8 scale, it would have been noticeably narrower, shorter, and smaller in every dimension. NASCAR inspectors, mechanics, and rival teams would have spotted the difference immediately. Instead, Smokey's modifications were subtle enough to survive casual inspection while delivering meaningful aerodynamic gains at speeds approaching 180 miles per hour on Daytona's high banks. Working with 1966-bodied Chevelles, Smokey carefully repositioned the body approximately 2 inches farther back on the chassis. That small change improved weight distribution and helped balance the car at high speed. He also smoothed and raised sections of the floor pan to manage the airflow underneath the vehicle, reducing turbulence and drag. The roof and window openings were lowered slightly. The windshield was given a gentler rearward rake, and the front bumper was cut, reshaped, and raised so that it functioned as a primitive aerodynamic spoiler. What made the car so brilliant was that the sheet metal still looked largely like standard Chevrolet equipment. To most observers, it appeared to be an ordinary Chevelle prepared for stock car racing. Smokey understood something that many competitors had not yet fully appreciated. At Daytona speeds, tiny changes in airflow could produce enormous differences in stability, drag, and top speed. The famous Chevelle was not a shrunken race car. It was a masterclass in exploiting the gray areas of NASCAR's rulebook through careful, almost invisible aerodynamic refinement, proving that Smokey's greatest weapon was always his understanding of airflow and geometry. When NASCAR inspectors realized something unusual was happening, they attempted to create body templates using a wrecked Chevelle as a reference. The resulting confusion forced NASCAR to develop standardized roof, hood, and trunk templates for the entire field. In other words, Smokey's car helped create the inspection system that modern NASCAR still relies upon. The engineering clearly worked. With one of these Chevelles, Curtis Turner became the first driver to qualify at more than 180 miles per hour at Daytona. Smokey later denied the simplistic 7/8 scale rumor, insisting that his modifications were far more sophisticated than simply shrinking the body. That explanation fits perfectly with his broader philosophy. He rarely relied on crude tricks. He specialized in exploiting gray areas where careful engineering could produce advantages that the rulebook had not anticipated. The famous fuel line trick illustrated the same mindset. By using long coils of large diameter tubing, he effectively added several extra gallons of fuel capacity without violating the written dimensions of the fuel tank itself. To Smokey, this was not cheating in the traditional sense. It was engineering within the literal wording of the rules. That distinction matters because it explains why NASCAR repeatedly responded to his innovations by rewriting the rulebook. Smokey did not merely break rules, he exposed weaknesses in the rules themselves, the tragedy that changed everything. The most revealing discovery connected to Smokey Yunick's garage was not an engine, a race car, or a hidden mechanical invention. It was Smokey's own voice, preserved in the massive autobiography he completed while battling leukemia. Published after his death as a 3-volume boxed set titled Best Damn Garage in Town, the work contained more than 1,100 pages and hundreds of photographs documenting his life, racing career, Indianapolis projects, and countless inventions. The autobiography offered something far more valuable than the myths that had surrounded Smokey for decades. Instead of exaggerated stories passed from one racing fan to another, readers were given his own detailed explanation of what drove him, what frustrated him, and what he believed about the sport he helped shape. At the emotional center of the book was the death of his close friend Fireball Roberts. During a race at Charlotte in 1964, Roberts crashed and suffered catastrophic burns. He survived for 40 days before dying from his injuries, and the tragedy had a profound impact on Smokey. The loss transformed his outlook on racing and pushed him toward an increasingly determined campaign for better safety equipment and fuel cell protection. In many ways, the autobiography revealed that beneath the legendary outlaw image was a deeply affected friend who never forgot the cost of dangerous racing. According to his autobiography, the tragedy pushed him into an aggressive campaign for improved safety, particularly safer fuel cell designs. He became increasingly frustrated when NASCAR founder Bill France Sr. repeatedly rejected or delayed many of his proposals. Smokey eventually left NASCAR competition around 1970, not simply because of disputes over technical regulations, but because he believed the organization was failing to take driver safety seriously enough. That context changes the way his later reputation is interpreted. The same man who became famous for exploiting technical loopholes was also spending enormous energy trying to prevent drivers from dying in fires and high-speed impacts. Smokey Yunick's autobiography also confronted the long-running controversies surrounding his military service, drawing a clear line between documented facts and stories that had grown larger through years of retelling. While some accounts portrayed his wartime experiences in dramatic terms, official records confirmed that he served in the United States military from 1944 to 1946. During that time, he achieved the rank of second lieutenant and earned an Air Medal while serving with the 15th Air Force. The book did not attempt to exaggerate those verified accomplishments. Instead, it presented them as part of the real history behind a man whose life had already become surrounded by legend. Unlike the debates about his military service, Smokey's racing achievements required no embellishment. His record was extraordinary by any standard. As an owner and crew chief, he accumulated 57 Cup Series victories and captured 2 championships. He also earned a 1960 Indianapolis 500 victory as a master mechanic, demonstrating that his talents extended far beyond stock car racing. Perhaps even more impressive, he became the first owner to win back-to-back Daytona 500s in 1961 and 1962, a milestone that cemented his place among motorsport's elite innovators and competitors. More than 30 motorsports halls of fame eventually recognized his contributions, including induction into the inaugural class of the International Motorsports Hall of Fame. Yet, the autobiography revealed a man who felt both celebrated and isolated. Smokey took immense pride in his inventions and engineering breakthroughs, but he remained deeply frustrated by the resistance they often encountered from racing organizations and industry leaders. Reading those pages alongside the surviving engines and patents makes the familiar outlaw mechanic image seem almost misleading. Rather than a reckless rebel, Smokey increasingly emerges as a brilliant engineer whose ideas were so unconventional that the establishment often found him impossible to control. So after all the myths, rumors, and decades of NASCAR folklore, the truth about Smokey Yunick is far more incredible than the legend. His garage did not reveal fantasy-level outlaw secrets. It revealed real engines that produced astonishing numbers, real patents that documented advanced engineering ideas, and a real autobiography that explained the mind of a man who refused to stop questioning the system. The building may be gone, but the evidence survived in museums, collections, patents, and the very rulebook he forced NASCAR to rewrite. If this story changed how you see Smokey Yunick, don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold motorsports legends.